I think the most difficult part of icing a sheet cake is getting clean edges. Round cakes are definitely easier to ice smooth in one pass with a spinning turntable, but for the square and rectangle cakes, it takes a lot more finesse to get those edges nice and clean. If you have ever wondered how to build a bakery-style sheet cake for any occasion, today is your lucky day. Professional tips and tricks for how to make this perfect two-layer sheet cake with filling and icing and fully decorated, just like the cakes I sold in my bakery. So let's dive right into this beginner's tutorial, starting with your favorite cake recipe. And today I'm using my bakery style yellow cake, of course, because it is really easy to mix up in just one bowl with a hand whisk. Essentially, it's just pouring the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, and it bakes up into a really delicious and perfect option for a cake when you're serving lots of people. You just can't go wrong with vanilla. So the first thing to take note of is that any recipe that you have for your favorite cake that makes two nice thick 8-inch cake layers will also make one nice half sheet layer. So basically all the cakes on my website fall into this category because most of my recipes yield around 6 cups of batter, which will give you two beautiful 8-inch round layers or one half sheet layer. Speaking of perfect cake layers, just check out how this baked up. So even, so beautiful, and it took less than 20 minutes at 350 degrees Fahrenheit. All right, so get this sheet cake into the freezer while we prepare the filling and the icing. And again, all the recipes you could ever imagine are on my website, so be sure to click through to the links in the description box below this video to check it out. And I'm keeping it fairly simple today with a chocolate buttercream layer and a fudge layer because double chocolate and yellow cake is like the ultimate combination. But keep in mind that no matter what filling and icing you choose, the method for building your cake is going to be the same. All right, so let's get to building the cake. And first I'm cutting straight through the middle. Like I said, I baked all the batter into a half sheet and I want to cut it in half so that my resulting cake is a quarter sheet cake. Now, freezing the layers does make this so much easier to work with, not to mention less crumbs, so I highly recommend freezing your sheet cake layers. All right, next we have to always start out with a nice thick buttercream dam to go around the entire perimeter of the cake. Even though my fillings aren't loose or runny like a mousse would be, or even fruit fillings, it's still a really good practice to just make the dam. It also ensures that the fillings won't get smudged into the final icing. Now, normally I wouldn't do two fillings like this, but I did have some extra fudge and chocolate buttercream from a previous project, so I decided to just use them both up. Go ahead and place that other layer carefully on top, making sure that it's really even all the way around because you really only do have one try. Now, I'll usually refrigerate the cake at this point to get it all nice and cold and sort of glued together so that once I start the final icing, the top layer doesn't just start slipping all around. Just about an hour in the refrigerator ought to do it. And as far as doing a crumb icing, I sometimes do it and I sometimes don't. It really just depends on what's going on inside my cake. And if there happens to be a lot of crumbs coming off, then yes, I'll do it. Or if there's a super soft filling inside, then yes, I'll do a crumb coat. But none of those things are the case for me today. So I'm going directly for a final icing in one shot. So if you can see, I like to pile the icing heavy on the top of the cake, and then I sort of, push it all to the sides and let it fall down over the sides while adding a bit more buttercream to the sides as I go. Alternatively, you could use one of those big, large icing tips like I did here, and it does make really fast work of getting those sides covered. But quite honestly, this is just the way I've always done it, all by hand. I think the most difficult part of icing a sheet cake is getting clean edges. Round cakes are definitely easier to ice smooth in one pass with a spinning turntable, but for the square and rectangle cakes, it takes a lot more finesse to get those edges nice and clean. I sort of just push the excess buttercream to the very edge and then over to the other side. And then this way, one swipe off from that other angle usually takes care of it with one pass. Sometimes, though, you will have to add more buttercream. And if you notice, this is an excess of buttercream because so much of it comes off to achieve those clean edges. And you also have to be sure that you have no cake showing through. So while it looks like a super duper amount of buttercream going on this cake, most of it's coming off. And if you're using a cake decorator's comb like this one, you're going to pull off a heavy excess of that icing. But if your sides are too thin, the comb is going to just take it right down to the crumb and you are going to have to start over again. So don't be shy to put on way more buttercream all over this cake than you think you would want, because most of it comes off again during the final icing process. And don't forget, all of these recipes, including every tool that I'm using, is going to be linked on my website at gretchensveganbakery.com. So just click the link below this video to check that out. So now we have to clean up the top edges of this cake, and you're going to just, with your spatula, one long stroke directly from one edge to the other. And the most important thing about this is that after each stroke you do have to swipe off all of that excess buttercream, otherwise you're just putting it back onto the cake. So after each pass, a swipe off of the excess buttercream back into the bowl, and that's how you get nice clean top edges for your cake. Now just to clean up the serving tray, and I'm actually using an upside down sheet pan because I thought I had a cake board, but nope. So you're probably going to want to build your cake on a cake board, especially if you are giving this one away. Okay, remember I always tell you guys don't throw out your excess cake scraps. My freezer is literally bursting with cake scraps, and I like to add them to the sides of my cake. I think I like the look of this and the taste way better than sprinkles, not to mention it's free and it's a really good way to jazz up your cakes. Vegan sprinkles can be really hard to come by and they're expensive. So the next time you trim up your cakes, just throw the excess into a bag and throw it in the freezer. And then a quick grind up in a food processor gives you these nice big fluffy crumbs to decorate the sides of your cakes. Now, I know what you're thinking, why go to the trouble of making that fancy design with the cake comb if you're just going to cover it over with crumbs? Well, that's a good question, and I wouldn't use the cake comb if I was adding sprinkles or cake crumbs to the sides, but I wanted to show you the process anyway. Comment below, I want to know if you think it would have been better if I left the cake sides plain, or do you like these fluffy cake crumbs, or are you a sprinkles kind of person? All right, we are almost there and ready for the decoration. Now for the border, and I'm using this shell tip, and piping out borders definitely takes some practice since you have to really learn and get used to the pressure of the pastry bag with some fancy wrist action all at the same time. The way that I always taught people in my bakery is that it's like a fast squish and then quick pull away. Squish, pull away. Squish, pull away. And once you get the hang of it, you can go really fast. Now the top border, I'm doing a little bit of a spin on that same motion with a scrolly S or a C motion. So it's one way and then the other way. It's like opposites of that little squish and pull away with a sort of like a C motion, a backward C and then a frontward C. Again, it's all just practice, and once you get the hang of this, you'll be zipping out these borders in no time. Now, I really love chocolate scroll work on a classic cake, and this isn't something that you'll find too much anymore. Most people are using all buttercream, even for the inscriptions. But I find chocolate work to be so much more delicate and actually easier to work with when it comes to writing and piping fine lines. I didn't really know what to write on this cake, so I wrote the most beautiful word there is, vegan. It's just a really pretty word to write on a cake. I love the scrolly V. In my bakery days, I never liked writing anniversary, but I loved writing congratulations. Some words are just easier than others to have a continuous flow. Just be sure you have enough room on your cake before you start. Cake decorating is definitely an art, and some people have it and some people don't, but each person will develop their own unique flair and style. For me, I'm very old school bakery cake decorator. I started teaching myself with the help of Wilton magazines all the way back in the late 80s. And if you've watched me for even a little while, you could probably pick my cakes out of a lineup since they all always have the same style. I even taught myself how to make buttercream roses, although I've been told by many that they're not roses at all. Oh well, I think they're pretty. And everyone, again, has their own flair. And if you want to watch a full tutorial for how I make these buttercream flowers, click through to that video at the end of this one. I do always make my flowers ahead of time and I keep them in the freezer. This way that I can easily pop them on the cake and they're easier to handle, and I can move them around if I don't like where I put them the first time. By the way, I picked up this new vegan food coloring and I have to say I really like the colors. They're very vibrant and they get darker as they sit. And again, all the links are going to be in the recipe post on my website. So I think that's really it. I hope I covered all the important details for how to make a sheet cake. I mean, it's not really that difficult. It's just a couple of those little tricks to get your sheet cake perfect. So definitely comment below and let me know if this helped you. And I hope I have taken some of the fear out of making your first sheet cake. Well, don't forget to head over to my website, grab all the recipes to make this cake. And if you're on Facebook, I'd love to see what you're making from my recipes. As always, a great big thank you to my patrons on Patreon and my PayPal pals. These folks are the ones keeping me buying ingredients so that I can continue sharing my recipes and making these tutorials for free. So if you think you can help for as little as a cup of coffee a month, click the links below to find out how. And before you go, where are my corner slice peeps with the extra rows? Yep, I see you, I know. That's where all the buttercream is. All right, everyone, until next time, happy vegan baking. Bye for now.